you for joining us for the Raleigh Transit Authority July meeting, starting July 8th, 2021, starting at 3:38 p.m. The General Assembly has approved the use of remote meetings during the statewide COVID-19 state of emergency pursuant to State Law 2020-3 NC Gen Stat 166A-19.24. The remote meeting of the City Council and the City Boards will be conducted in accordance to the provisions of that statute. I will go ahead and read the roll. Nathan Spencer.
Here.
Karen Ridge.
Here.
Sarah Prado. Jennifer Truman.
Present.
Brian Burnett. Joshua Gill. LaPondra Edmondson.
Present.
Lawrence Carter. And present Tallulah Omokaya. So jumping into today's agenda, we discussed yesterday the Go Raleigh Procurement Manual. Well, are there any additions or revisions to the agenda? All right. I know that we have public comment at 4 o'clock and we have a good stock of people in public comments. So I want to run really quickly through what we went over yesterday. We do have one item that we need to vote on today. And I kind of want to move up some of the other information items to get them done as quick as possible before around the public comments and before we discuss the RFP, since that's going to be probably another lengthy conversation. Oh. Sorry about that. All right, and you said we have how many people today, David, for public comment?
I'll yield to Andrea there. That number was fluctuating as I think we had some sign up, but not actually sign up in time for us as we went live at, I guess it was 3:20. So Andrea, do you have a revised number?
Yes, we currently have 6 signups. 2 have joined as of now.
All right, perfect. So yesterday we discussed the Go Raleigh Procurement Manual and we went ahead and approved that. That measure was passed. We discussed the return of the R line for special service, special event meetings only. There's 2 coming up, the GalaxyCon and the IBMA. We approved that. There is one more item that we do need to vote on, and I wanted to wait until we had Karen and Nathan here to kind of briefly run over that and decide as a group, go ahead and vote on that. We did discuss the 5310 Enhancement Mobility Program update, and that's where we left it yesterday. So let's jump in if we can get an update from Morgan to give those that weren't on the call yesterday an opportunity to be brought up to speed before we vote.
So I'll jump in just for a moment here. We are prepared to do the presentation today, but I didn't know exactly how in depth the board may want to, or may want Morgan to go into this presentation. Certainly the Transit Agency Safety Plan is a federal requirement, and so it's very prescriptive on how we develop this plan, as we actually follow a federal template that is set forth in 49 CFR. And obviously the paratransit as well as our fixed route safety plans meet the federal requirements as it's designed through 49 CFR. There were some questions when I originally reviewed the plan about our metrics. So today, obviously you can approve the plan now. We can go through just the metrics so that everybody understands what our metrics are. And the regional metrics, they're actually part of our Metropolitan Planning Organization areas metrics for systems our size. Or we can just go through the whole presentation. So I just wanted to lay out those 3 options for the board and see how you'd like to proceed.
Well, we had the presentation yesterday. I wanted Karen and Nathan to kind of be brought up to speed. So what do you guys think?
Why don't we just do the metrics?
All right. That works for me.
All right. I think Morgan can run through the metrics there, and that would be great. If I think, Andrea, you can just fast forward through the metrics. And Morgan, is that okay with you?
That sounds great.
All right.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Morgan Simmons. I am a senior transit planner with the Raleigh Transit Raleigh Transit Division. Excuse me, on the bus and bus facility side of planning. And like David mentioned, this particular plan is a federal required document. It is the first of its kind. So it's something that FTA is requiring us to do and report on specific metrics. And just to kind of reiterate a few things from yesterday, this is not our only safety plan. This is just a template or a formatted template by FTA to identify specific measures and metrics that they're wanting us to start tracking from here on out, and providing them that information. So just to kind of make sure there's an understanding that this is not the only safety plan and operation plan that that our management system and our system operates under. But as far as the safety performance measures and metrics go, and this information is also included in your memo as well. So if you want to follow along with that, please feel free to do so. But we have 4 major metrics that FTA is asking us to track and continue to keep up to date. So one is our fatalities. And so focusing on all those reportable fatalities and doing that based on revenue miles and by mode. So keep in mind too, our safety plan is not only just for our fixed route service, but it's also for our paratransit operations as well. So because this is the first of its kind, we're utilizing information from 2015 to 2019. And if we would have went through the presentation, I would have been able to show you that this is something that came about around 2019. And so, of course, due to COVID, a lot of extensions have taken place. And so that's why we're kind of still utilizing the same data, the data that was identified when it originally, the ruling originally came out for us to develop this plan. But based on the data collected from 2015 to 2019, kind of setting our baseline for how we'll continue to measure ourselves from here on out, our fatalities is 0 and our MPO targets is 0. So you can't definitely get no better than that, of course. Our injuries is something that is measured as well. And so that's any reportable injuries and also by customers, by employees and the public. So everything is meshed together. And so this information is provided not only from 2015 to 2019, but it's also provided by based on revenue miles and by mode. And so that information is listed here as well. And so, of course, our MPO targets are based on, where we are right now, and it'll be something that we're measuring ourselves with on an annual basis. Next slide. Our safety events is something that's measured as well. Safety events is anything that's reported. So it could be injuries, it could be fatalities, it could be something that is not necessarily a major fatality or not major fatality, sorry, major injury. So everything in between is included in the safety events section. And so that information is included from the actual amount of safety events as well as the, based on revenue miles by mode. And that information is as shown here. And then last but not least, we have our systems reliability score. And that is the number of major failures or major mechanical failures based on our revenue miles. So we've only had a very few over the last couple of years. And so that information is what you see here. And that's based on, like I said, the fixed route service and the paratransit service. And a major mechanical failure is something that's going to be something that requires a little over $4,000 in costs, towing, and it could be something to the extent of an engine failure, a transmission failure, and require that the vehicle is out of service for 40 days or more. So we've only had a very few of those, handful of those over the last couple of years, and that information is what you see here. Next slide. So just like I said, just to remind you that this is a required federal document, first of its kind. So everything that you're seeing here is kind of setting the baseline of how we'll continue to measure ourselves from here on out. We'll continue to have ongoing coordination with the MPO as we're determining our targets for not only our system, not only just our system, but the region as well. During yesterday's meeting, there was conversation about us providing this information on a frequent basis to RTA. And so that definitely is something that staff can bring back to the Finance and Policy Committee, recommending us bringing it back to the Finance and Policy Committee to just kind of determine how frequently you all would like that information and in what format you would like that information. But this is information that we are hoping to get approved today. And once it is approved, we will be able to get this certified by the MPO and of course, just be in compliance. So I'm open to any questions that anyone will have at this time.
Thank you
Morgan,
for that.
this is Karen Lynch. I have a question about the incidents, the safety incidents. What kinds of things are we talking about? Because it looks like kind of a high number, 325, even though it is over 4 years.
Over 5 years, actually.
Is it people tripping or falling down the stairs or?
So it can be something as much of if there is an accident with the bus and someone hits, hits the mirror on the side, that's considered a safety event or it's considered an incident. So anything that may not even be something that is that even is an injury related incident. It could be just, doesn't necessarily require it to be injuries. Sorry. Get my words together. Sorry. Safety events, it doesn't necessarily require an injury to have occurred. It could be something just as much as a minor infraction on the bus. It could be a hit or miss. It could be any accident that the buses get into, which that happens. And it doesn't always necessarily have to be the cause of the operator. So it's all those things over the course of, and that number is over the course of 5 years.
Okay.
I have a question. This is Tallulah Pay. Have you all, I know that this says that this is from 2015 to 2019, but were there any tracking of that past this date over the last, like currently and over last year, even though we were kind of within COVID?
So this information is tracked through other safety and operational plans that the system has in place. And of course, this is just, we're utilizing the 2015 and 2019 based on, what's been set by FTA, like the template was given to us prior to COVID happening. But this information has always been tracked. It's just, this has been a plan that, is a lot that's requiring us to have it in this format. So it's always been tracked. It's just not been something that's necessarily in this type of format.
Okay.
And provided to FTA.
When it's, I know that we requested it to be presented to us. When it's presented to us, can we have it like the data broken out a little more so we can see maybe what happened each year, if there was this particular route that has more incidents than another, things like that?
So it's more so, we can do that. That's fine. I'm just trying to, because normally we don't have route information affiliated with it, but because even in the current plan now, it's broken out the major mechanical failures, that sort of thing. So it shows like what particular vehicle happened on, what date it happened on, that sort of thing. So some of that information is already broken out, but we can definitely work with the RTA to figure out exactly how much we need to break it out and what format works best for you guys.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions?
No.
What was that? I'm sorry.
Sorry, no questions for me.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, since there are no questions and the rest of us had this yesterday, this is an item that they're asking us to vote on. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the roster for us to take a vote. Please signify your vote by saying yay or nay or yes or no. Nathan Spencer. Wait, I'm sorry. We need to get a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
All right, thank you. We have anyone to second that?
I'll second Karen Ringe.
All right, thank you. It's been moved and properly seconded. All right, Nathan Spencer,
Aye.
Karen Range,
Aye.
Jennifer Truman,
Aye.
LaPonda Edmondson,
Aye.
and I as well, Tallulah Omokaye. So we have gone ahead and approved the transit safety plan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Morgan. All right. We have 7 minutes. So I know that there is a discussion on returning to live meetings. So I want to get as much, like I said, of the other comments in before public comments as possible. Is there who is presenting on the return to live meetings? David.
Yes. This one may be pretty quick, but council has announced that boards and commissions will be live again by July 31st. So that means that meeting the standards of other boards and commissions, we would go live in August unless there's if there's a special request of the board that you would like to relay to staff. But that does appear to be how the city is progressing. So we wanted to number one, when we first put this on the agenda, we wanted to have the discussion, but then obviously there seems to have been a little bit more definite determination by council on this action as well. But certainly we'll answer any questions that you may have. I'm not sure if we'll have the answer today, but we can certainly do some research.
Karen Range, question. Is part of council's message that people should wear masks at the meetings or unmasked?
I can check to see what policy is. I would say that at council meetings in the council chambers recently, it has been a mixture of individuals that have been masked and some that are unmasked, but so it's not mandated. But certainly if that's something that may be if that's something that is requested by a board or commission, whether that's possible or not, I would need to check.
Well, it would just be good to know what the city's requirements are. I mean,
all right. Either way, I'll go ahead and I'll check on that and make sure I get back to you so that I don't misstate exactly what the policy is.
This is Nathan Spencer. I'm personally good with doing in-person meetings. My one caveat is that I think if at all possible, we can encourage all the people attending the meeting, both public and on boards and staff, to be vaccinated. I know for me, my 9-year-old still isn't able to be vaccinated, and there's some question about the Delta variant being able to be carried by vaccinated people to unvaccinated people. So I will probably be also wearing a mask until that happens, but it provides a certain amount of security for me to have a notice to everyone that they should be vaccinated. I know the city can't force it.
This is Tallulah. I would more so suggest that there be a notice that everyone remains safe, and if we are going to show up, that maybe we do our due diligence of getting tested, especially since if you get vaccinated, you can still catch it and pass it to others. So I wouldn't want us to come in with a false sense of security that being vaccinated is the end all be all when we can still kind of put each other in danger. I know that I was talking to David and he said that we can't pass it up to council about, I know in August is back to school time frame, and that may be a little bit something to kind of consider if we're going to go back in person in August, or if there's an opportunity for us to come back in person in September or something of that nature, when people kind of have if it might be easier and more streamlined for people to come in person. But I think I'm definitely down for us asking that those who attend know their COVID status prior to attending a meeting.
Do you mean requiring COVID tests before each meeting?
Well, I don't mean required it. I mean, we can't make anybody do anything, but I think that just for our own, personal safety, if we're like, just to Nathan's point of having a notice of asking people to be vaccinated, I think it would be better if we're going to go in that direction to more so ask people to know their status versus requesting vaccination.
I like that.
You get what I'm saying, Karen?
I'm a little confused by that. I mean, it seems like it would be easier just to say, if you're not vaccinated, wear a mask. Or, just because the governor's requirement, basically right now, the governor says we can meet in person. As long as you're encouraging vaccinations, of course, and if you're not vaccinated, to wear a mask.
Staff will be happy to follow up and determine if some other language is being used by other boards and commissions. And I can relay that to the board in advance of the next meeting.
That sounds good.
One quick thing.
Jen, sorry.
I'm repeating this request loudly, not just here, but also for other meetings. I think that we should absolutely have a hybrid option for those people that want to make public comment or those people that aren't comfortable to be able to participate in the meetings. This has been an amazing lesson in how open we can be in engagement if we offer the ability to interact with a meeting digitally. So I'm personally comfortable meeting in person. And if we have an in-person meeting, we'll be there with my mask on. But I strongly think we should allow the ability to call or Zoom or WebEx in.
This is LaPonda. I just echo those comments that Jen just raised. I think having a hybrid option is a good point, especially for people who want to provide public comments, for them to be able to join us virtually if they don't have that level of comfort. And then the other small area to consider would be just protocols in terms of, how will we be socially distanced, or are there, barriers or screens and other things that, maybe we can implement in order to keep people safe while we are meeting in person.
Thank you for that. I actually think that those are two great suggestions, especially the virtual option, especially for people doing public comment. I think that like Jen said, like you said, is a great way for us to stay engaged, and we can still stream them in to the chamber if necessary. What is City Council doing? I know we're at 4:00, but quickly, what is City Council doing? I know they've been meeting in person. What is are they socially distant? Do they have kind of some partitions up for them?
The council table was normal. The council chambers, not as much did during parts of COVID, but there is some reduced seating within the council chambers.
I'm sorry, you were breaking up a bit. What did you say? Sorry.
So there is reduced seating in the council chambers, and the council table remains the same as it was pre-COVID.
Thank you. Any other questions before we jump to public comments or comments on this or anything? All right, so we're all in agreement to return to public meetings in August, so long as we're wearing masks or just, knowing our stats. And is there a way that when we do come into the council chambers that we can space out a little more at the table?
Staff will add that to the list that we'll check on, and we'll bring that back.
Okay, thank you. All right, it's 4:02. If there are no other questions regarding our return to in-person meetings, I know that you all said about 6-7 people who wanted to make a public comment. Can we get their names?
I think, Andrea, do you have that?
this is Andrea. I am having a hard, we have 5 folks on for public comment, and I am not able to access them right now. I am not sure why.
All right, we'll give that a couple more beats before we jump to our BRT systems element and 60% design discussion. And we will close off with our discussion on the Go Raleigh Management RFP. Well, in the interest of time, let's go ahead and jump to the Wake BRT systems element and 60% design. And Andrea can tap us if she is able to access them, and we'll pause or hopefully be wrapped up by the time we're able to do that.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. So again, with this item, we do have, we did send out a link to the presentation that was provided at council, not only by transportation, so transportation or transit, we provided a larger view of BRT at a systems level as we work on station design and basically BRT design elements. An engineering services department, which is actually in charge of final design, which is from 30% all the way to full design, did a presentation as well. So we sent both of those links to the board. And so hopefully you've had the opportunity to see those. Today, we're prepared to go over certainly system design. And if the board would like us to go through that full presentation, we can. Or if there's any specific questions, we'll be glad to try to hone in on what you'd like to see today. Either way is fine with us.
Any preference? Well, we can go to.
Should we just do the initial, and then if we need to go more in depth?
That works for me. I didn't know if anybody else had any insight on that, but let's go ahead and jump into it. And if we have questions, we can kind of, like I said, go a little more in depth. And again, for the interest of time in the event that we do have our public comments.
All right, I'll go ahead and ask, I think we have.
I think Karen has a question. I'm sorry, Karen.
Yeah, Madam Chair, if for the staff presentation, I would appreciate, I believe, there was in the news that we, there was some additional funding received, federal funding. So appreciate a little, particularly since we have new members on our board, a little update on where we are with that recent grant and how much it was. Thank you.
All right, so I'm sorry, Madam Chair, whenever you're ready, I'll start, and then I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Mila Vega.
All right, we should be able to hit on that as well. The funding, is that a part of the presentation?
I can go over that while they set up the presentation.
All right, perfect. Let's do it.
All right, so as part of the New Bern Avenue corridor, that is a funded small starts project currently. It did receive $30 million in federal funds, which was also getting approximately $30 million in Wake Transit funds to advance that corridor into construction once design is completed. Through the Recovery Act, there was a set aside for small starts projects. And through a formula allocation, our project, because of its status, did receive an additional $4.52 million. And so that additional 4.52 can be used as a 100% federal share. It does not require a local match. It can be used for eligible project expenses, or it can be used to supplant local match if needed, either way. So it could go for cost, or it could go for actually supplanting local match. So very unique opportunity with those funds as they come with much flexibility. Again, I'll answer any questions that you may have on that, but that was a particular congressional set aside as part of the Rescue Act there for small starts projects.
Is that 4.252 million solely for the New Bern Avenue corridor, or is it for the BRT project as a whole?
That was specifically for New Bern Avenue BRT. It had to meet specific criteria, either being in project development or already receiving so projects, depending on their size, may or may not get funded fully in a single year. So many projects receive those funds as part of their multi-year funding process. But in our case, that came across as a single allocation, and we received our actual funding for the project as a single allocation as well. But it was for the New Bern Avenue BRT project.
All right,
This is Trevor. If I could make a suggestion that we use some of that 4.52 million for engagement along the corridor and working with community groups and community members along implementing the design and making sure that it fits with what community members want. I think that would be a good use of dollars.
I agree.
Karen Ringe, I'm not opposed to that, except isn't that money already, don't we already have that money? Because we've hired consultants that have been on board for many months. I mean, is that needed, I guess is my question.
I do think that we need to have some more in-depth engagement. We have consultants. I don't know if they have the capacity to do the engagement down the New Bern Avenue corridor in the manner that it needs to be done. And that's just not a glaze over, but actually having street teams, volunteers that actually go out and engage. And that's a lot of money that could be used to, A, that would be economic stimulant for the area, and B, it could be used to make sure that we're getting those areas, those pockets of people engaged, like Nathan said, in the design of the project, not just the knowledgeability that it's happening. Well, that's my suggestion.
Regina Smith has left the meeting.
Andrea, were you able to access any of the public comment people? All right. I thought somebody was gonna say something. Okay, well, let's get into the presentation.
Ingrid, I'm not sure. Can I advance the slides or can you do that for me? Ingrid, can you move to the next slide, please? Good afternoon. Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Mila Vega. I'm going to provide an update on the status of Wake BRT system elements, and also a quick summary on public engagement, as well as 60% design on the New Bern corridor. Next slide, please. Again, this is, you've seen the slide many, many times. This is our 4 BRT corridors that the city is a project sponsor for, designated by the Capital Area Metropolitan Planning Organization. We have a total of 4 corridors. New Bern, it's currently at 60% design. Southern, Western, tracking on somewhat parallel tracks. Western is already in the federal project development, approaching 10% design. Southern, the routing was selected for the project, and we are currently waiting to hear back from the FTA on our project development application. And Northern Corridor, we are currently procuring consultant services to do more work on defining the route for the corridor, because in the latest Wake Transit Plan update, there is a recommendation to look at a larger service area and better define the corridor before we initiate design. Next. I will talk to you about Wake BRT system standards. So because we are implementing not just one line, but a set of 4, and then thinking about future extensions already, we're trying to come up with a comprehensive approach that will be consistent from the user perspective, from the operating perspective, and we're looking at a variety of standards that will help develop brand recognition that will make it user friendly. So then if you use the system, say in New Bern, along New Bern corridor, and then you use it along Western corridor in the future, or maybe heading south to connecting to Garner, the experience will be the same, and the look of the system will be recognizable. Also looking at various standards that will promote efficiency, environmental sustainability, and I will get into that a little bit more with some of the features that we're looking at. Next. So this is a New Bern corridor, and with this, because this is the most advanced project, we already have well-defined station areas, and that allowed us station names, which are basically designated by the cross-section. It's consistent with how we are naming our current bus stops within the system, so it will be very familiar to our current riders, as well as it's going to be easily identifiable to new riders or visitors. With a couple of exceptions, obviously we have Go Raleigh Station. We'll just call that Go Raleigh Station, and then East Raleigh. That's East Raleigh Transit Center, future transit facility that's separate from a BRT, but that's not obviously a cross section. A couple more is Longview, which is, we know there's I'm sorry for the noise. Longview, and then medical district. So medical district, that's the area of WakeMed. So few deviations from the general naming convention, but most of them are cross sections, so they will be easily identified geographically. Next. Wake BRT station design. We began that process in the fall of 2020. We did peer review, we did public surveys that included visual preference. Then we held multiple workshops with municipal partners, as well as project management team. You might remember that when we first started the Wake BRT program implementation, we set up several different committees to advance the program. So we worked with the project management team that has representatives from obviously City of Raleigh, Go Triangle, Town of Cary, Town of Garner, Wake County. So some our key partners who Wake Transit Plan assisted us in the process. Then we went, I did more conceptual designs in another survey. And currently we are tracking towards developing final station design. Next. Next slide, please. Okay. As we approach stations again, thinking about the overall system, we set 5 key goals that we kept referencing throughout the process so that we can always balance out those decisions against the goals. One is uniformity. We wanted to make sure that the stations are easily recognizable and uniform as the system continues to grow. We looked at scale, because we wanted to be sensitive to the context, the surrounding context. For example, maybe a larger station where we have a lot of boardings and lots of activity, maybe scaled down version where the physical environment just doesn't necessarily support a giant station. Existing style, we wanted to look at other infrastructure, transit infrastructure that already has been built, and make sure that what we are building kind of fits within that style. Another very important consideration is operation and maintenance. We're looking at the design and materials and all these components. We wanted to make sure that whatever is selected can be easily maintained and can be maintained well throughout the life of the system. And cost, obviously, we have a limited budget. So while we wanted to include all of the various elements, we wanted to be mindful of the cost and kept balancing that and make sure the cost is reasonable. Next. I will not dwell on this too much, but this is basically, we developed several different typologies, and you can see number 6 is grayed out because we don't have that typology for New Bern. But essentially, this typology is they are very similar, but they respond to various placements within the quarter. For example, in urban core, you might not need so many walls and barriers and protections. and you want the station to be designed so people can flow through it. Maybe a station in Split Island, which is the median, needs more protection, needs more wall, needs to make people more secure. So that's what it is. Basically trying to address this placement of stations within the corridor. Next. Station amenities, we had this conversation for a very long time. Before we even started to look at what the stations could look like, we went from multiple workshops with stakeholders. We did some surveys, basically tried to identify what are must-have stations to go, what must-have amenities to go into stations. And this is the list that we have that's included in each station, and all of them have the same set of amenities. Next. When we went to the public this spring, we already had some designs, conceptual designs for stations, but we were looking for feedback. You can see two options for each question that we were asking. One is we asked about the lighting. Is there preference for lighting design? Obviously, there will be lighting, but how that lighting looks, we wanted to see if there is more interest towards the more interest in more standard kind of classical approach, or more, I guess, high-tech and dynamic. You can see those linear lines at the bottom. Then we looked at the slope design. Top option just shows single slope, very clean, very streamlined. Bottom option shows double slope, where the slope essentially lifts up to welcome a bus at the station. And then ask a question about variation on steel color, light or dark, just for the, again, kind of continuing that theme of aesthetical preference. Next. This is an example of our station. This is a rendering of the station in downtown on Wilmington Street. And you can see, when I was talking about the typology, this station is very transparent. We were trying to be very mindful of how not only people flow through the station to minimize the number of walls and barriers they have to navigate through, but also to be mindful of the storefronts that are located behind the stations, make sure that those storefronts are still visible. And we did meet with all businesses within the downtown, some businesses along the New Bern corridor itself, just to kind of talk about all of those. We had one-on-one meetings to talk about all of those details so that business owners understand what structures will be in front of their doors, essentially. Next. This is another station placement next to a multi-use path, and you can see how that would interact. Again, a little bit more, you can see in the back now, you can have more protection because this is, I'm sorry, I think it's not a multi-use path, it's more like a suburban setting. And that's why you see more protections to create a little bit more privacy, not only for people who are waiting and then the noise of the bus, but then for people who are living along the corridor to actually block that noise and block that activity. So that's where all those different types are kind of come into play. So then we can choose and place appropriate treatments in our different places and be sensitive to the surrounding environment. Next. This is our peripheral station, a scaled down version. It is a little bit smaller. The platform itself is the standard length to accommodate a 60-foot articulated bus. The station itself is a little bit smaller. The canopy and of the station, but it does have all of the same amenities that any other station has. The difference with this station also is it's not level boarding. It's more of our kind of like regular service would operate. We had to comply with some of the NCDOT rules for station placement in a 45-mile-an-hour corridor. So that's the design had to be responsive to some of the existing regulations. But again, we're also mindful of the user experience and make sure that all of the amenities that people would expect to see anyone at other stations are still there. Next. Here's another rendering, and this one is, I believe, adjacent to the multi-use path. Yes, it is. So you can see bikes in the background, bike parking, just another rendering. Again, some more walls to separate the activities a little bit. And I just want to call out, you can see those glass panels at the stations. Right now, they have some kind of coloring that's translucent. That's our, this is a great spot to place future art. So I'll get into that a little bit more, but just kind of while you're looking at the renderings, just want to call that out. That would be a great location to include art in the stations. Next. This is our median station. You can see the crosswalks, you can see pedestrian activated signals, you can see the ramp and the protections leading up to the station. You can also see that you can, once you're at the station, there is a wall that kind of blocks people from either stepping off the platform and also blocks make sure that you don't feel like visually you're sitting in the middle of the roadway. So this is the most protected station that has more barriers, more security features to make sure that pedestrians and riders accessing the station feel safe while they're crossing and while they're waiting. Next. I apologize, my dogs are making noise as soon as I start presenting. So you all know that we also work with Dare Coulter. She's our artist in residence. She's doing a lot of work on helping us figure out what art within the quarter could look like. We're not only looking at stations, but kind of looking at it as their, multimodal system and where all the art components could go, whether it's unique seating that you can see, some concrete benches, whether it's paints, maybe glass panels, some other treatments. So we did the survey and kind of just tried to see what options were most favored by people. And again, this does not obviously add up to 100, so people didn't have to choose just one. They kind of ranked that, but benches and painting on the streets, like painted crosswalks, for example, maybe some painting, something painted on the multi-use path. Those items were most popular with the respondents of the survey. We are continuing to work with Dare, and we're making sure that we are coordinating between the art group and the station design group to make sure that there's a continuous loop of feedback. Next. Branding process. Similar to how we started station work in the summer of 2020, we started branding research. And today I will be sharing some of the branding concepts that have been developed. We again went similar to stations. I don't want to dwell too much on it, but similar to stations, we have multi-step process, surveys, going back to concepts, going more surveys, working with our municipal partners, working with our branding technical committee that was put together specifically to deliver this task. Next slide, please. We did the survey, and basically the key takeaways from that survey back in the fall of 2020 was there was an interest in the existing Go brand and how new BRT service could just become another branch out of the Go brand. And then also there was a lot of interest in bold, inviting color palette. Like when you think about our Go Raleigh buses, it's a very bold red color. So the theme will be continued with the brand for BRT. Next. These are our 3 branding concepts. We went through multiple names, multiple iterations, multiple versions of this. This is what actually percolated to the top and was presented to the public. So the color is orange. The name is Go Plus. Obviously, Go is a nod to our existing Go brand, and then Plus is either Go extra distance or Go further in life, or there are different plays on the Go Plus that we could use for branding and marketing in the future. So That's the name that everyone, all the partners that we worked on, and the public that we all settled on. Next. Wake BRT public engagement. We did another open house in spring of 2021. Obviously, it was virtual. We held live Zoom calls where people could either sign up and submit a question in advance, or just sign up, jump on the call and ask a question during the call, put it in the chat, or call. We had one Zoom call for each corridor to make sure that if somebody's only interested in New Bern, somebody's only interested in Western, they didn't have to sit for the whole thing. But we also had representatives from other departments who could answer the questions about any corridor if that question came up. And we also did surveys. We did 3 surveys on the corridor, again, trying to be mindful that people might not want to do a New Bern survey if they live along Western, and vice versa. But each survey included questions about stations and branding, and all of those questions, no matter what survey you took, you were able to answer, provide the feedback. Next. We also did additional outreach as with prior efforts. We sent out postcards to announce the open house. The postcards were sent out to the property owners as well as renters. We also did individual meetings with business owners. Those meetings have been coordinated by DRA. We held various community meetings, stakeholder meetings, met with Boyle Elementary, met with businesses at Trawick. And then there was a separate effort that was specifically requested by RTAA board for a while, and that has been in progress for months at this point. It's kind of a continuous progress. Targeted faith-based outreach along New Bern, southern western corridor. So this is where there's direct calls to churches and faith-based organizations. Excuse me. We also, I don't know, next slide, please. Let me see. Okay. We also placed yard signs along the corridor. I know this is also another request that this board always has. So we made sure that this has been done. And yard signs were available for you if you wanted to pick up one or two and place them where you thought was suitable. We also did polling boards. So because of the virtual nature of public engagement during the pandemic, we're trying to figure out how to get to the riders that are actually using the system today and ask them the same questions if they maybe not following, all the social media updates, or not checking the website, or maybe they don't know about the project. So what we did is, and this is our version 2 of this approach, which kind of did similar in the fall of 2020, had some lessons learned and tried to modify. We placed polling boards with large images, very simple questions that you could pretty much very quickly answer with sticky notes. And we placed them at stations, parks, libraries, to get that non-virtual feedback and get to the current system users. And we got some good responses from this polling boards. There was a lot of activity once they were out there. And we collected all of them and took pictures of all of them. So we had the information for our records. Next. So station area planning, Wake BRT New Bern station area planning, that's a separate project outside of the design work. This is a project that is led by the planning department, and you've heard many times about equitable development around transit. So this is essentially phase 2 of that, that focuses on public engagement, working with the community along New Bern on developing tailored station area plans. This work is being kicked off currently by the planning department. I believe they're working on the open house in the near future. So this work is gearing up, and they are focusing a lot on public engagement and working with community ambassadors to make sure that the word gets spread and there's a better feedback loop between the community and the team that is working on the project. Next. It's my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I just need to step away for 2 seconds to grab some water because I tried to blast through this presentation. But Head Patel is on, so he can jump in. Just give me 2 seconds. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mila. Are there any questions from the members on the station design?
I have several.
All right. Sounds like Jen. Yep.
Oh yeah, sorry, I keep forgetting to say, hey, it's Jen. I'm very concerned about the mid island median stops and their safety level and their access level and their width. You know, my dog has opinions about this too. I understand why we're doing split islands because we don't have the depth to do a back-to-back stop in those locations, but I'm very concerned that we're just putting a bus stop in the middle of the road with no protections in front of it. No shade for the south-facing ones are going to be in full sun, surrounded by blacktop year-round. You know, I'm curious what are we really doing to address pedestrian safety for those middle of the cross-section stops.
So again, when I don't know how easy it is to bring up the rendering of that station, but we are installing pedestrian crossings, safe pedestrian crossings, so it will be signalized and thank you. People will be able to cross safely to get to the station. So once they get to the station, there is an island that you can see. And I know the scale is a little small, but there is also bollards around the bulb out. So then they'll be able to get to that island and walk up the ramp. The ramp has, the ramp has the railing, and they can step onto the station. The station, once you're on the station, so unless you go back and use the ramp, and that ramp basically puts you right onto the crosswalk, the station, there is no other logical way of getting off the station. So that will, you know, people will not be stepping up into the roadway essentially. That's why you see all these walls around. The whole back is covered and the side is covered. So that's your essentially cue not to go anywhere else other than the station. There is a cover, the canopy covers 80% of the platform. There was a lot of conversations between 80 versus 100. We decided to go with 80 because there was interest to have at least a small section of the platform open in case it's a not scorching hot summer day or rainy day, but you can actually enjoy sunshine and a mild spring or fall day. There is some open space. Again, just want to remind you, the idea is not for anyone to sit at this station for more than a few minutes. The frequency at peak hours, 10 minutes. So the idea is you get to the station, you'll hang out there for a couple of minutes and your bus shows up. And obviously our buses have AC and the heat and everything else. And so the essence of the system is just really to keep people moving.
No, I can appreciate that. I want to keep as a rider with my kids frequently. Like I'm going to be walking to this stop with my children in a stroller in my arms and holding their hands in the heat for time before I make that 10-minute wait. And I agree it's frequent and that's going to be good. But my 5-year-old would beg to differ that there's not a logical way to step down this one little yellow painted 1-foot step. When we talk about raised platform loading and BRT lines and the kind of international standard, there's often front walls with opening doors like you would experience on some subway and monorail loadings. Like how this is a glorified bus stop, not a station. And I just want to be really clear that I don't think that this is good enough for the middle of the road. I think it works very well for the more peripheral stops where it's on the safe side of the road, where it meets up with the bikeway and does those things. But the reality is that it's really simple to walk off the front of this into the middle of the road. And I have serious concerns about that. So I don't know if the rest of the authority agrees or doesn't, but I think that we need to take another pass at this station type, because I also think that this station type will be more prevalent on some of the other lines as we get further into station design. I think one of the reasons we haven't heard as much in the public comment about that is because, quite frankly, we didn't ask. We asked people whether they liked a sloped roof one way or two ways. You know, I'm in architecture. I love talking about that all day long. I'm happy that we asked people about their architectural preferences, but we didn't ask them how they were going to get to these stations, whether they would personally walk or bike, how far they would walk before getting there. And like, those are actually valuable, like, community engagement pieces that would help us to better understand, like, how long would someone need to have been walking, and would they need shade, and would they need these other, I think the reason we have a long list of amenities is because people recognize they're walking away to get to this stop. Anyways, I also think that the lack of trees contributes to that shade problem. I'm going to take a second to collect my thoughts because I got really passionate there, and I apologize if it came out very strongly, but as a longtime rider, I think it's important that we seriously think about this access and the actual experience here, because it's clear in the rendering which stops are shaded and which aren't, and I'm going to continue to call these stops because I just don't think that they've gotten to station level. But I'll turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you for your input, Jen. Mila, do you have any comments to that, or Het?
I don't have anything to add at this point. I don't know if David, you have anything?
I do not.
Okay, I do have a quick question, a couple of them. So one of the renderings, I don't remember what setting you all put it in, but it was the one that looks like there's a park behind the station or the stop. You know what I'm talking about? And there's a window in the back of the stop with art, I guess, on it.
I think it's the intermodal one.
Yeah, I'm wondering if that's the one.
I'm just wondering if that's interchangeable with the urban one to make it easy in and out of the stop versus having the one at the park be the one with the glass behind it. It could be open like the urban one so people can get in and out easier if they're at a park or someplace like that versus using the one with the glass decals.
So, we have two typologies. Urban one is obviously the most open, and the other one is where it's a suburban setting. It has more glass to protect, to kind of capture the noise and separate from the residential uses, and also multi-use path where, you anticipate more activity of pedestrians and bikes kind of going by, so trying to separate those activities so then there are less conflict points. So that's where I think the logic of having the more glass there. But we can certainly discuss pros and cons of more or less glass panels in some of those locations with the design team.
And is there a way to, as another question to Jen's point of the safety, like, are they raised in the stops that are in the intersection? Are they raised or are they flat?
They are raised, and they are level boarding, so that when the bus will pull up, people will just walk up onto the bus. And also, I should have mentioned that we're looking at having bikes being allowed inside the buses, so no one will need to basically step off the platform, secure the bike in front of the bus, and then get on. You can just roll your bike onto the bus, and there will be bike racks inside. So they are raised.
How would that work? Isn't that going to take up space for ridership?
No, there are different designs. So, and when Het and I before the pandemic, when we visited different systems, typically it's located in the back of the bus. And keep in mind, we're using 60-foot articulated, so they're already larger vehicles. There are different designs in the back of the bus where either the bike can go vertical on the bike rack or stay horizontal, but they don't take up that much space.
And how far, sticking with the stations, do you all already have in mind where each station would be throughout the New Bern corridor?
Yes, we do have a map that shows all of the station locations and associated names. Kind of starts with that, but I'm happy if we need to split back to that.
No, we don't have to go back to that now, but it could be something that we do discuss, because I know we have to kind of move on, but does it show the stations and styles along the corridor where the stops will be?
Yeah, that slide was actually really useful.
We do have a slide that I don't think we included in this presentation, but I think it was included in the council presentation, where we have the map with little blocks of, this is the typology that you expect to see at each location. So yeah, we have that. We're happy to share it with the board.
Yes, please. Also to the route design, how far are we along picking the actual design of the route? Not just the stations, but the route that the layout for where the bus is going to end up. How far along are we with that?
By route design, just to make sure I understand, are you talking about the running way options, like mixed traffic or median?
Right. Yeah.
It's been set pretty much at 30% design, so we are at 60% now.
Okay. Can we at our next meeting kind of go through and have a more like a robust presentation on that and the stops and anything that you all have had an opportunity to pull up when it comes to making them a little more accessible and safer, to make sure we're covering the issues that Jen brought up?
Yes, we can include the typologies and our running way options for sure.
Yeah, just from a designer perspective, I think it'd be useful to have the cross sections when we're trying to have these conversations so that we can reference those in the slides.
Madam Chair, it's Karen Ringe. I have a couple questions.
All right.
One is, I thought one of the options for station amenities was landscaping, and I didn't really see that in any of the renderings. Does that mean that there won't be any, or just not that far along?
There will be. It's not considered an amenity. It's just going to be a feature of the overall design. We are not there yet to show you any renderings. There will be definitely landscaping, and we are working on that. We've been working on just kind of a high level concepts with the landscape architect. But yes, we have Susan Hatchell, and she is our landscape architect on the project. So there will be a detailed landscaping plan for the corridor.
Well, I would very much like to be part of that discussion at the right time. I mean, I know that it's part of the mission for sustainability for the city to use, and they're also going to be more sustainable under the sun. So I really hope that will be part of it. Another question, or just sort of comment, both really, about when the stations are in the median, in the middle. I recall at one of the presentations, this was probably even a couple of years ago, when you were considering the pros and cons of right side, left side, and down the middle, there were reasons why down the middle made sense, and even to a certain extent from a safety perspective. And I'm wondering if Head or Mila might address that. Because, I mean, I can see why people might be concerned about crossing two to three lanes of traffic to get to the stop. But I believe, as I recall, there were reasons for that. So, there
are always trade-offs. But two key. I'm sorry, did I interrupt you? I have delay. There are two kind of key elements that jump out immediately. One is when you put the BRT lanes in the median. This is basically premium treatment you can do for BRT line. But not only you create a more reliable system that's completely separated from any other traffic, any other conflict, you're also taking away that conflict from driveways along the corridor. So people trying to pull in or out of the driveway, or people trying to cross a driveway, or bike cross a driveway while somebody's pulling out, while the bus is there. There's just less conflict. So it's completely exclusive BRT system in its own facility. And that's where the safety component comes in, that there's less conflict with all the other users within the corridor.
Right, and also that's really helpful. And also, I mean, I hear Jen's concern about the potential of stepping into the lane, but I'm sure we've all ridden many, subway systems where, you step before falling into the track. And usually there's some kind of, bumpy or elevated path before you step onto the train or the bus I imagine that's built into the platform, something that's,
You're
I'm talking
correct.
about?
Yeah, we
I'm
have
thinking about like the Washington subway system where there's sort of like a bumpy little paths on the floor so that you can, to help give you a visual so that you don't get too close to the edge.
Yes, we will have that included, and also similar. I like your analogies, similar to subway systems. There will be an audio announcement, and there will be a next bus arrival information, so people will know when the bus is approaching, so they can prepare to board. And so there'll be lots of visual, tactile, and audio cues for people to kind of navigate through their system.
Okay, great. And then finally, can you remind us approximately the distance between each of the stops? I know I'm trying to remember is it half a mile between each stop about, in terms of when you think about distance?
I think, help me out, I'm blanking out on the number.
It's a half mile typically, and in some instances it can come down to about little more than a quarter mile, so like 0.3, 0.35 miles, depending on the density of the neighborhoods or the connections. But typically for BRT spacing, we have half a mile.
So really, if you're like halfway between two stops, you're really not walking any more than like a quarter of a mile.
Yeah, so about a quarter of a mile or 5-minute walk.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
What's the spacing between the current stops? The non-BRT stops?
The standard fixed route transit within the city of Raleigh, what we consider is a non-suburban, more of an urban fixed route, is a quarter mile.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions in regards to?
Yes, Madam Chair. If you don't mind. This is Nathan Spencer. I got a couple questions and comments. For one thing, I do have an issue with the Longview stop name. I know that seems petty. It's actually it's quite near my neighborhood. I'm just behind them, but Longview is kind of a track back to a time that probably we don't need to put a lot of energy in, especially since the deeds in a lot of those houses still have the covenants to pass between just white owners. I don't know that we really should be highlighting that neighborhood by its history and not highlighting some of the others along the way. I think that if we're going to go with one, we should stick with the one. So I would highly suggest that we look at cross streets along there, the North King Charles and Newbern or something along those lines.
We can certainly do that.
I am a little concerned about the lighting and slope, as it might be considered art. And I know that there's some push through Campo to reduce and restrict the amount of money going to art. I believe that their presentation included wayfinding and other sorts, and there were some photos of lighting and more expressive lighting stuff. So if Campo is going to restrict that, I have concerns that we may run into a problem depending on our station design. Within that same vein, when we were doing branding with stakeholders, did we bring in any non-Raleigh stakeholders, considering that this is going to be a standard that goes into Garner and Cary and probably Knightdale and Morrisville?
Yes, most definitely. I mean,
Okay.
Mila, you can jump in as well, but not to sound like it was too difficult, but we had many, many stakeholders. And if you've ever gotten that many stakeholders together and asked them, which design do you like, it becomes challenging. And but we actually did end up, I think, in a place that when you have that many stakeholders, pretty much the ones that you just named there, especially, you know, when you think about Cary and Garner, which are actually going to have service within their borders. Again, just trying to make sure that we had that buy-in was a big part of the process. So great. We appreciate you bringing that up.
Okay. Just, you know, I don't want to get yelled at by Cary because they have a big bus that says go, you know, Raleigh right over it and, you know, pushing their service. The last thing I want to echo Jen's concerns in terms of center. I was a big proponent of the median runway or the right of way or the median direction. And I still like it. I think it's the best route for a best way to do that. I would say that we should be conscious to have people with small children looking at the comfort level on that design. And the heat issue is really, really big. I understand we want to make sure that people can enjoy weather in the spring and fall, but if Portland is an example of what we're going to start seeing, we should think about extending those routes wider and longer, and make sure they cover the entire area. I realize that the idea is not to have people wait, but peak time is great. I want it to be 10 minutes or less. That's wonderful. My concern is the person off peak who's doing, you know, third shift or something that is, or not third shift, but, you know, working a different shift that is right out there in, you know, 4 o'clock in the afternoon before rush hour, going to work and exposed to the hottest sun possible in the middle of August. I'm really concerned about that, especially with what we're seeing in terms of reports of the wet bulb concept and the dangers to go along with that. If we're going to build this for the next 30 years, we got to keep the changes we can expect in climate in mind for those. So those are my comments and suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. I did have one more question, and I know we're kind of running on time, but that would be, have you all had any conversations with the vision impaired community as you all walk through the design of the stations? Or just this whole concept?
Yeah, so we do have representatives on our stakeholder committee that represent vision impaired community. And also we had, I think, maybe 2 or 3 specifically targeted meetings to talk about just ADA components, whether it's the size of the letters or, you know, using some kind of audible announcements or other features that we're including. So yes, we did include them in the process.
Yeah, and Mila, I know that Dr. Scott, the chair of the mayor's committee, was you know, certainly part of that process very early, and probably went all the way through.
Yeah, that's
all right. Thank you. Any other questions?
There's one further thing. I'll be quick. I thought of this after, this is Jen. I thought of this after Karen kind of pointed out a subway. I think the difference between this situation and the subway is actually also that a car couldn't come up onto that one foot platform. And I think the accident this past weekend at Glenwood and 5 Points is proof that that does occur. And I think Mila pointed out there are bollards protecting the handrail of the ramp. so that we don't have to replace that often, because we know that will probably get some hits. But we don't have bollards protecting the people at the stop. And anyways, I think we really just need to think really carefully about each of these elements and going not just people into traffic, but traffic into people too. I want this to be right and safe, because I want to ride it every day, and I want a lot of people to ride it every day. So my comments come from a heart and a place where I want this to be good for everyone.
If I could, real quick, and I know that you probably know this, but certainly if you step off of the platform, you're stepping into a bus lane. And so that doesn't mean that a car can't get in the bus lane. So it's very, you know what I mean? So there is that layer as well. Hopefully, that does provide a little bit of, other than the bus that's actually coming, don't step in front of it. But other than that, you should have that lane free, and because it is dedicated bus only. But point well taken, and we'll certainly, it sounds like we'll just make sure that we do some more touch points with you and certainly the board. And we'll prepared to do that. So thank you so much.
Yeah, to Jen's point, I think that it would, mistakes happen, accidents happen. It's not, it's not that somebody would try to get in the bus lane, or possibly somebody would, but even if there was a car going out of control, something that would keep it from slamming into the pedestrians at the bus stop and causing, tragedy, and, on the high end and on the low end, the city being sued. Because that would be the, next thing.
Already happened at a bus stop today on the road. I mean, the cars are right next to the bus stops today. I guess I don't see how it's any different than that.
I'm thinking more the median bus stops, because we don't have any bus stops there. Not necessarily the ones that's on the sidewalk side, but the bus stops that may be in the middle.
I guess what I'm saying, but the bus stops in the middle will have 2 lanes of bus lane only, no cars. And right now we have bus stops right on the road where cars go by all the time. So there's always that threat of a car could bump the curb and hit up someone at a bus stop today.
I don't disagree with you, Karen. I just think we should set a higher standard for our BRT line. And I think we are in the process of setting higher standards for some of for our basic bus stops and shelters and our basic cross sections in the city, that we have trees and protected bike lanes and bikeways and bus shelters set back. So even though those things exist in the city now, I feel like I'm kind of goal setting a higher standard here.
And we already, especially if we're talking about the New Bern Avenue corridor and its midsection, there is also a lot of cars that end up going across that area. If that's where some of the bus stops would be in the middle, if we're talking about the intersection, not the intersection, but the median of New Bern Avenue, there's often a lot of cars that do end up crossing over. There's a lot of accidents sometimes in that space where people maybe aren't as careful as they are close to a sidewalk. It is just something worth thinking about, especially as we're putting stops in different locations than we've had them before. Because some of this will take getting used to. We just don't want there to be an accident if we can avoid it. Since we have to do this. Are there any other questions? Okay. Thank you all for your comments on that. It looks like the next item, thank you for your comments on that. It looks like the next item is, I guess we'll skip public comment until next month's.
Tallulah Pay.
Yes.
It's Andrea Epstein. They're all available. I apologize. We were having technical difficulty, but we still have 4 on if you want to take public comment.
Okay. David, this RFP, when does it go live?
Obviously, need to talk to the board today. But I have a couple of thoughts regarding some of the questions or comments that have come back from the board so far, as well as, so I know that will take place when we have a discussion about the RFP, but we would like to get this out at the end of this month or the very 1st of August.
Okay, let's jump to public comment since they've been holding. Because we're at the end of time now, if we can get, if the authority members don't mind holding on a little bit longer with us, we will hold public comments to a 3-minute maximum, so that we can kind of get through those comments and get to at least start talking about this RFP. All right.
Madam Chair, I'll keep time and I'll just give you a hand signal as far as time.
Okay. All right. So we're going to pause our meeting here at 5:02 and we'll jump into public comments.
That's where y'all get ready to come in.
Yeah.
Hello?
Hello? Andrea, we can't hear you. Or if you were talking, I can't hear you.
Oh, I apologize. Thank you. The first person that signed up for public comment was Rashonda. Is Rashonda on the line to speak? The next person that signed up for public comment was Barbara Shields. Is she on the line to speak?
Yes, I am.
Okay, we're ready for you. Thank you.
Hi, Barbara Shields. I wanted to comment about the pension plan that we have here at Go Raleigh. The pension plan was like when I first started here, it was just going on my paycheck. It wasn't told. We wasn't told anything about it. How it works, and if the pension plan is for the drivers, I wanted to know if I could have gotten my information from my hire date up to now, the amount of money that I have available. I asked the guy from Standard. He told me I could get this, but I never got it. And the paperwork that we get is every now and then, and it's not really clear what the money is all about. But I just wanted to know, because after 21 years, and I compare it to another driver, I don't think my money is right. And I was hoping that if we could possibly get a audit done. A little more information on this pension.
I don't have anything to do with that. I don't told her.
Thank you, Ms. Shields. Can anybody give her some feedback on the pension plans or directing her to where she can get the information?
Madam Chair, I'll make sure that a representative calls her back directly.
Okay, and Ms. Shields, if once you're contacted, if you feel like you're not satisfied with that information, please let us know and feel free to circle back to us so we can kind of dig a little deeper. But we will have you connected with someone regarding that. Is there a way, I mean, are there other people that have that same question that you have, Ms. Shields?
Yes.
Is there a way
and the drivers that left, why it's taking them so long to get their money once they're retired or fired?
Madam Chair, this is Byron Bryant, GM at Go Raleigh.
Yes. How are you?
In response to Ms. Shields, there is an annual audit of the pension fund. We also have quarterly meetings that we have the ATU 1328 also attend. And we can connect her if she likes. I can connect her directly with Mr. Ed Trabincio, with the contact for.
I've already talked to Ed.
Our pension plan, and he can get the information to her.
Is there someone other than Ed that she can contact?
Ed would be the primary contact for that information. And I think she referenced Ed could get her the information. Maybe there's a communication disconnect that I can help facilitate.
All right. Can you?
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Would you mind reaching out to her directly? And if there's any way to communicate with the other drivers, an opportunity to learn more about the pension plan and have their questions answered, so that way it's easier on you and them. They can come to one space after you reach out to her and kind of get their questions answered around the pension plan. I think that'd be great. Is that possible?
Yes, ma'am. We make that available quarterly. The representative from Standard comes quarterly, and he actually meets down in the lounge when he's not having a meeting with the management and union members.
Okay, thank you. Ma'am, is that helpful?
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next person that signed up is Terrence Dewberry. Are you on the call, Terrence?
Yes, I am. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for your time. I'll be brief. First of all, I'm excited about some of the stuff that I've heard with the direction of transit and Jen's feedback on the safety issue is spot on, and I appreciate her being a rider of our public transit service, and I'm sure she can give some insight as well as maybe contact some operators to give some insight on how to approach those stations. I will be brief. As I stated, we just wanted to follow up on the request of the board that you all requested last month for items that was presented to you all. Those items have been forwarded to Mr. Eatman, and you should be able to review those documents. Additionally, you all mentioned funding, and I received a request or a grant for CARES funding for $23 million back on May 19th. I don't see, I think you all mentioned $30 million in federal funding and $4.52 million. I understand the CARES funding can be designated. Some of those funds can be designated to the employees. And considering all the stuff that we've been through the last year or so, we would request that some of those funds be rewarded, especially to the maintenance department, as well as the operators who've went through, and we had operators that went through the rioting or the unrest that was actually involved and assaulted on this bus, as well as some other things with this pandemic that we've given up a lot of things to keep this transit moving. Some of the information I like to present today is we're concerned about the direction that we're going with this transit situation. We have averaged 207 drivers over the last year or so, but we've fallen off that situation, and we're down to about 199. We're talking about expansion. We need to concentrate on how to train and retain the drivers as well as the maintenance people. There's been a shortage of buses. I don't know what has caused that. We've been consistent for a period of time, but now it seems like that we don't have sufficient enough buses in order to make service. The payroll software that we mentioned last month has yet to be corrected as far as properly calculating the employee wages. This is a major concern. I know that Mr. Bryant has stated that he will correct this situation, and we will hold him to his word on that situation. I also thank you, Byron and David Eatman, for awarding the safety bonus to the employees. I think it's well deserved, and especially in the environment that we deal with every day. A gotcha is just 1 second away at all times, and for us to be safe out there on the road, it deserves recognition. On the down point of the situation, we're notified that the 401 route has been granted to Go Raleigh Access, which is confusing because they are a door-to-door service. That's reduction of staff, reduction of service for our transit bus operators. And we would like to understand why that was done and why couldn't we continue to service those that route, even if we had to drive a shorter bus to do so. We have great employees here that cares about the community, and the money over people approach is not working. We need to invest in the people and make sure that we have the best transit service available. I think that's my time. I do appreciate your allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Terrence, so much. Your input is always welcome. So let's jump into that. He's absolutely right. As we're talking about the BRT and increasing our lines and things like that, we can't overlook the satisfaction and safety of our operators and our engineers and things of that nature. Especially if we're having a hard time retaining drivers, then the BRT will not be as successful as we're saying we want it to be if we don't correct this. To the CARES situation he was talking about, I agree. Is there any way that we can get some extra bonuses to the people who were operating the buses and things like that through COVID? Especially since we have like a large influx of money.
So I certainly can't talk about labor related payments and things of that nature. That is certainly up to TransDev. That is their collective bargaining agreement process. The city provides guidelines on funding, whether that comes from federal funds, Wake Transit funds, or city funds, and so we operate the transit system within those parameters. I would say that while those funds can be used for operators, there are limits to what we can do with COVID funds or any federal funds that we receive.
Okay, and what happens to those funds if TransDev no longer carries the contract later on?
So about 80% of the CARES funds to date we will not reinstate fares in 22. We did not have fares in FY21, and we did not have fares in the last quarter of FY19. So that takes care of a large sum of those funds. We also had extra expenses. We were providing what we were calling at the time was a COVID pay during that, which also included those extra expenses as well. So again, we are using those funds as wisely as we can. But we are still seeing impacts of COVID, and that's going to be lasting for the rest of this fiscal year, as we have not budgeted any fare box revenues for all of 22.
Is there a way we can use some of these care funds that we do have left over? I know I and other members of the authority have received pictures of buses that are filthy, and that kind of goes against what we've been told is happening with the buses, that they're being cleaned regularly. And it's not a situation of, which bus so that bus can be cleaned. It's a situation of this shouldn't be the case, especially from what we're being told in these meetings. So is there a way that we can make sure that those funds can go to making sure that the buses are actually clean, and that that we have the safety mechanisms for the people operating them?
The short answer is most definitely. And that would be an operating expense. I'm not sure if Mr. Bryant has anything additional to say. I have not seen any photos, so I'm not sure exactly what you're referencing. But Mr. Bryant might want to respond.
Byron Bryant, GM Raleigh. The photos I think that the chair is referring to were brought to my attention earlier this afternoon. I do agree that the condition of whatever vehicle that was not ideal. However, based upon the level of, or the poor condition of the vehicle, I believe that is more likely a contingency fleet bus that's not used in revenue service and rarely used on our bus lot.
I was trying to put the picture up. I don't know if y'all can see that or not. But yeah, it's disgusting. And I would be surprised if this is the only bus that looks like.
The photos I observed were largely a accumulation of dirt and dust, looked like in a virtually triangle box. So based upon that, my opinion based upon that would be that is likely a contingency bus. But I would love to address that issue.
Yeah, this wouldn't be if these buses were being cleaned the way we were told they're being cleaned, regardless of where it is. Like, is there a way that we can have by our next meeting have our buses inspected so we know which ones are clean, which ones aren't?
The operators inspect the buses daily when taken out and when brought back.
Oh, they are so funny. That man ought to be shaming himself. That is so funny.
Hold on, real quick. Just one more question before we get to the next person. Payroll situation. He was saying that there was an issue with payroll that was making sure that the wages were being miscalculated and that was supposed to be fixed. Is there an update on that?
There is not an update for Mr. Dewberry on that. However, I think it's a bit overstated. It presents as though everyone's pay is wrong. There are, I believe, approximately a handful of payroll items outstanding that need to be adjusted, possibly.
But I get that does anybody else on the authority have any?
This is Nathan Spencer. That I don't know how to best respond to that other than saying, I understand that out of 200 operators, 5 or 6 is not a large number, but to them, that could be rent and groceries. So whatever issue is going on with payroll, that is quite literally the role of TransDev, is to pay these operators. We would be doing this and working through the agreement if it wasn't for North Carolina law. So if TransDev can't do it, then that's clear indication of a need for the company not to be eligible for applying to do it again if they can't get it right for our operators.
And I agree because we've had a few public comments of people talking about having to return back to work while they're in quarantine, the buses being dirty, issues with payroll, and these can't all be isolated incidents. And it can't all be that there's always it's just this, versus fixing the issue. We've been told if we've been told that the buses are clean, yet we have pictures of how filthy this bus is, it leads me to wonder what else we're being told that's not necessarily true. And if people are complaining about, if the operators are complaining about what's going on there, and we're having a hard time with retention and things of that nature, then there's obviously a bigger issue at play here. And we can't run a transit system and expand a transit system if it's not being managed properly, and if the operators are not just satisfied but safe.
Thanks for that, Madam Chair and Mr. Spencer. Regard to the payroll issue is not a outstanding issue for all operators. Maybe I was not clear when I spoke a second ago. There is an outstanding issue with, again, I believe a handful of operators regarding their incorrect pay some time ago. So we're looking at resolving that issue with getting the payroll system corrected. For those that are not aware, we have very complex pay rules with the union. So those rules are sometimes difficult to program into payroll programming. With regard to the bus cleaning, when I mentioned the bus is likely a contingency fleet bus, that means that bus would not be cleaned daily because that bus is not in use daily. And I believe the other issue with regard to the retention, I believe Go Raleigh is on the low end of turnover in regards to the industry compared specifically with other regional partners in this area.
But just to the point, it's not about whether this bus is used every day, so it's not cleaned every day. This is filthy. If you saying that you saw the picture that I saw, this is really disgusting. So this is not it just missed a couple days being clean. This is nasty. And even if it weren't a COVID situation, we want to have a high standard, in transportation. And we don't want our ridership riding around on dirty buses or our operators operating in dirty buses. Right?
Absolutely, I agree with you. Neither one of those things would take place with a contingency fee plus. That bus would not be in revenue service. A passenger would never ride that bus. operator would not be operating that bus and revenue service.
So you're okay. Okay. So we'll pause on.
Madam Chair, can I comment on the payroll thing?
Yes, and I know Karen also has a comment as well. Yes.
Okay, I'll make it quick. Mr. Bryan, I totally understand that you weren't paying everyone. What I'm saying is that the pay is the core of the reason why these essential workers are coming every day. And I know you know that. I know you've been in the field with these folks for a long time. But any payroll issue needs the full attention, because I understand that it might be a mix-up that's cutting out maybe a small amount from them, but that small amount can mean a really big difference for people. So I don't want us to make the assumption that just a couple people being affected is not a big issue.
You're absolutely right, sir. And that's why we're going to make sure that we make it right. We have been working hard with corporate, several of our payroll folks. So there's several steps in our payroll process, and they've all been meeting for the past 5 weeks to try to get this corrected in short order. Unfortunately, we have not had any luck getting it exactly right.
How long has this issue been going on?
I believe there is an outstanding issue from prior to my arrival at Raleigh.
It's been going on that long? Karen, you had a question?
Well, really just a comment. We do know that we have been losing drivers. We also have observed that Go Durham's having the same problem, Go Triangle. And given, I'm trying to look at this in the broader context of COVID challenges and loss of a lot of essential workers in different areas that are now reassessing the need for raises, really. I would hope that and believe that our city and TransDev would be looking at this as well, because we do, as Tallulah said, so we have to expand. We're expanding our system. We've got to have the staff, and I know we spend millions and millions of dollars on high-tech consultants to develop our transit system. If we're not paying if we need to pay our drivers more and our maintenance folks well to have a top-notch system and to retain good folks like Terrence Dewberry, I don't know if this is an issue for the city council to take up. Is this influx of funding that is COVID related an appropriate place to look, even if it's hardship pay? I don't know, but and I don't know the answer to it, but I wanted to raise it, and I don't think I'm alone in folks on the Transit Authority and in raising the flag about this. So thank you.
I agree, Karen, 100%. Are there any other comments?
Madam Chair, this is Jen. I just had a brief comment. I just want to say that, reflecting as a person who has worked a variety of jobs and been paid hourly, and whose husband is paid hourly and his jobs, the payroll does matter. And having something outstanding for anybody for that long is just not good enough for the values that I think the city of Raleigh sets for its employees, for the people who contract with it. And I just want to say that even though it is tricky to manage this size of organization and do the things that you guys need to do, and I respect the difficulty of your job, this authority doesn't exist to mediate between the operators and the people who are supposed to be managing the operators. And the fact that we're being asked to do that reflects a human resources issue within the organization. And I just want to state that at a big picture level, if operators felt comfortable talking to their managers about these things, they wouldn't need to come to us. And I just think that we should have a higher expectation for that. So I'm sorry to speak high level, but I think that's important to say.
Oh, that's definitely a fact. Which takes us to our item that we have to get to before we run out of complete time, which is the RFP. But I think we have another public comment.
We still have 2 more.
All right.
We have Shaquan Williams on the call.
I'm here. I am a former employee, and I do have some major issues with Go Raleigh as hiring, safety, and termination, and is seeking legal advice for the following: wrongful termination, bias and favoritism, and unjust treatment of myself, retaliation of coworkers and management, unfair disciplinary actions, defamation of character, embezzlement of my vacation pension. Not only that, the failure to due process, unfair and not justified. There is adultery among the coworkers and management. The confidential of my personal information from when I was terminated, it was linked to other third parties. And then the real reason was for the fact that it was sexual porn. That was the real reason why I got fired, and it was shared by coworkers in retaliation of my employment by an employee who advertised her services and retaliated against me to teach me a lesson that caused me my financial loss, mental, legal finances, and discretion of the police report and the transit video made it prior to my termination. And upon me getting COVID, because I did have COVID, it put me at risk because of the lack of protocol and infected with the virus safety issues from unknown and threatening to come back to work from medical leave or terminated. And it was protected under the ADA, which transit violated. The COVID pay, I was denied of all benefits. I actually got my benefits from my other employee, which that should not have been the case because I was part-time. The violation of the American Disability as a heart patient of my life endangerment, the violation of employment and at will and breach of contract, the violation of the right to work law, the ADA prohibit other discrimination of the included employment, transportation, and public accommodation with pandemic, which violated my life, which was a long time span, which falls under the Title I of ADA 1990, the Public Service Title II, and the disability discrimination covers the firing, the training, job assignment, paid benefits, leave, and all employment related activities, which Go Raleigh all violated. And I will be seeking some kind of advice because all this needs to be justified because I thought Go Raleigh treated me wrong and I was not able to get a clear hearing after the fact that I left. The union did not tell fights. They act like they did, but I think they were just buying time. And I'm not going to go for that because this was my main job. And it has been a loss for my whole entire family, which is me and my daughter. And I will be seeking some kind of legal advice. And I don't know if you guys just need to go into that. Because I thought that it was wrongful. Because the real reason I was terminated is for something else. And that was called of retaliation. Not because of what I actually did. And according to the video, it does not even match to the police report that the employee had mentioned in her reports. But they overlooked everything and just terminated me and didn't even let me have a due process.
That is a lot.
Yeah, it is. It's very a lot.
What to say? I'm sorry, it's not. I don't even know what to say.
I mean, it is a lot. It is a lot, and I'm seeking legal advice at this moment because I mean I was completely wrong. It's all about retaliation in my situation. Not only that, when I'm trying to get benefits, I can't get benefits because Go Raleigh or TransDev, they stopped me from getting everything. And this was my main income.
You should have given.
Wow.
Madam Chair,
Yes, please.
Brian Bryant, Go Raleigh. With regard to Ms. Ms. Williams' benefits, her benefits ended because her employment ended with Go Raleigh. A lot of what she was speaking of is personnel matter that I can't address based on my position, but Go Raleigh nor anyone in management filed any sort of police report or police made any sort of claim against Ms. Williams with the police. That is a separate issue.
I think the fact that she's seeking legal counsel means that we, as an authority for as the city standpoint, really can't step in too much. David, can you?
That would certainly be my interpretation. That is, yeah, that would have to follow a due process for sure.
I'm sorry, Miss Williams, that's a lot. Porn, all sorts of stuff. We got dirty buses.
I mean, it's a lot.
Can't be lying, Mr. Bryant. Everybody can't be. You know what I'm saying? It can't be that everybody else is. This is too much. This is a lot. I don't even know what to say. Does anybody else have anything to say? Ma'am, Miss Williams, I really do hope that you receive resolution in this situation. I apologize. There's not more that we can do, but thank you for coming to air out these issues. It is on record. I don't even know what else to say. I don't even know what else to say. I'm sorry.
No problem for listening. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you for being brave enough to speak up. Okay, we have one more person in public comments.
That is correct. The last person we had sign up was Dwight Spencer. Dwight, are you on the call?
Yes, I am here. How's everybody doing? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I want to first of all say this. We have heard a lot, and this is one of the reasons why the North Carolina Transit Workers Association was created. And I want Mr. Bryan to know that we're going to have to stop using the word Go Raleigh, because right now TransDev is putting a very bad image on the city of Raleigh Transit. I would like people to start saying TransDev and take Go Raleigh out, even though we're the front lines of the city. But right now, TransDev is setting a bad image on the city of Raleigh. And I think this is why it's time now that we need to make this change. And it needs to be made to change from the general manager on down to the managers now. We need to make this change. And I know there's a bidding process, and that's something that I want to ask Mr. David Eames. Have the RFPs been sent out yet for the bidding process? Have the committee been put in place for this process to start? Because we know that there is a transitional time between the new company that may possibly get this contract, whoever it may be, and to get TransDev out of there at their expiration date of December. So we need to know this answer. I will be talking with that young lady that just got off the call. But RTA members, those photos that you have seen, our organization have received more photos. Mr. Bryan can cover up for TransDev all he wants to try to cover up. Those photos speak for itself. Those buses are nasty. They are very unsafe for the bus operators. They are very unsafe for the passengers. And then TransDev want to say that they're practicing safety during this pandemic time of COVID-19. That's a joke. And those bus operators should not have to get on that bus in that type of environment. And the passengers who pay for this contract should not have to get on the bus and be in that type of environment. So Mr. Bryan has done a great job in coming in and clicking in with the rest of the managers and covering it up. These bus operators are tired. They're fed up. This is why this association was created. Now, they can't silence us. They tried to silence me as a former activist, but I'm an advocate now representing the association. They can't silence us no more. And this payroll and all this kind of stuff that's going on, it should not be going on with the company. We're going to hold the City of Raleigh Transit Authority, the City of Raleigh Transit accountable, because there's no way that Mr. David Eaton and his staff didn't know half this stuff was going on. And to hear this and that going on and on, this is very unacceptable. And for us to be talking about these great plans we have on the table, and how NCTAA want to advocate with the city to have people to ask people to use our transit system, park their cars, and use the transit system more. We can't do this with this type of company that's got this contract. And the City of Raleigh Transit has got to be held accountable too. This is why we're going to be lobbying City Council as hard as we can and using whatever type of influence that we have to use to get TransDev and its managers out of Raleigh, North Carolina. They are setting a bad image. And our transit system do not need this type of image. We just don't. I'm going to send these photos out. I think the community needs to know. The community needs to see what type of management that we got overseeing our massive transit system. This is very unacceptable. And Mr. Bryan should not be making excuses for this company. Even though he worked for them, he was not, he should not be making excuses. These other managers are not saying anything. They leaving him to hold the bag. And it's unacceptable. And North Carolina transit workers, this is why we are here. We're here to advocate for the city transit. We're also here to advocate for these bus operators and these transit workers to give them some type of comfort. And just like Ms. Karen said, one of the members, they are not comfortable going to their managers. That's why they come to the RTA and steam off their frustration, because they are not comfortable going to Mr. Bryan. They're not comfortable going to Mr. Reginald Caldwell or Matthew McCall. I think our friend Morris have already went over to Wolfwine. They are not comfortable, and they should not be in that position. And we need to have a company that's going to look out for these bus operators, because I tell them all the time that the Raleigh Transit Authority members and the city council members and the mayor and the city council at large, including the Wake County Commission, they're some of your biggest supporters. They're some of your biggest supporters. So if they're not comfortable talking to managers, and I've been on this call ever since 3:30, this is so sad that this company is setting this type of image on our city transit, and we trying to move forward and better our transit system. The BRT plan ain't worth a hill of beans. We got to have a company such as TransDev running it. So I say that, and Mr. Eaton, I'd like to ask, have the RPD been sent out and has the committee been set in place?
Okay, thank you for your comments. The RFP has not been sent out. That's actually the next item on our agenda. Are there any comments from the committee, from the staff, or anybody? Okay. Thank you all for your public comments. Thank you for taking time thank you for speaking up, taking time to come to this meeting. I do hope that we are able to find resolution to all issues that we have the ability to find resolution for, especially, I know we talked to Ms. Shields about the pension plans. We got an update from Mr. Dewberry on the payroll situation and the need for some sort of bonuses or support for the operators. Also the retention issue with our operators. Ms. Williams talked about being a former employee and all that came with that and her recent firing. And Mr. Spencer, again, kind of closing off the loop with kind of summarizing what they were saying and speaking up on behalf of NCTWA. So thank you all for your comments as we move to this very important next issue, which is a great segue to the Go Raleigh Management RFP, staff review of methodology and performance metrics. This RFP is for the management of Go Raleigh. So this speaks directly to what we're talking about. David?
Yes, Madam Chair. So I set out the full RFP as well as the data metrics, which are in the RFP. The first email I sent out actually contained the data metrics and our evaluation criteria that we would be using for evaluating the firms that proposed. And the other email was the actual full RFP. That is in draft form currently. We do need to finish our cross references with some of the exhibits and things of that nature. But pretty much the RFP is in form in the shape that you received it. So certainly today I can answer any questions regarding what is in the RFP. But it seems like, there's certainly some thought processes out there regarding the RFP and how the board's priorities might be put into that document. So certainly I have some ideas of how we might be able to be successful with that. But certainly I'll take any questions on the RFP or the evaluation criteria if the board has any.
I know that Nathan had a lot of in-depth questions, so I would like to start with him.
I appreciate that. First, I do want to apologize for not being available for yesterday's meeting, and I appreciate being able to comment on it today. Before I get into my comments, I do want to mention I find it troubling. I first brought up this contract last winter and was told, well, it's happening, it doesn't end until December. We're going to get to it in the summer. And it was mentioned by myself and others throughout the year and the last 6 months. But it was only really it came to a head because of all the attention this is getting with with labor right now. And that's why a special meeting was called, and that's why we're talking about it now.
We did bring it 2 months ago as well. We brought it 2 months ago, but we haven't been able to address it for 2 months.
Well, so the difficulty in this is that that now we're in a place where all of a sudden we have to rush to get it out. Besides the fact that we have had plenty of time to talk about this and even talk about it incrementally in committee or otherwise. My concern is, based on this, it's either that staff is too close to this current management company, or that the concern is that they want to play it safe and are concerned about veering into areas of concern with this process, but that's putting concerns of legality before the legality, or before the concerns of our operators and the future of this agency. I mentioned before that this is you don't need our vote to get this out. You can put this out whenever you want. I'm glad that you're willing to take our opinion and get our thoughts. I'm asking that you take as much time as is needed to get this right. We have a responsibility to our operators and the maintenance staff and our riders that we do this right, because the garbage that we bring in and the garbage that we pull out is what we're going to get. If we don't do this right, we get what we deserve out of it, and we need to do it right to begin with. And I know we can negotiate with the top scoring firm. My issue is, what are we going to ask for? What is it that this top scoring firm is expecting that we're going to say, these are our priorities? And I think that our priorities need to be the ability to judge our labor, their management of labor, not just on on-time performance, not just on their ability to do things within a certain cost factor, but also to be able to do it where we're not losing staff we're at 3 times the level of hiring, that we're not in a position where the RTA is dealing with labor complaints every single month for the last 3 years. I think there's a lot that we can do. So in my letter that I sent to the board and to staff, I put a fair number of suggestions, and I appreciate the staff looking at this and taking this into account. The key things I want to bring to the attention are the fact that we need to write this RFP so that we're focused on a management company that is concerned about their staff and the management of that, not a conglomerate that is interested in a certain pay on that and to get the most with the least. The more we can focus on our expectations, I think the better we're going to be on that. So that in short are my comments.
Thank you, Nathan. Does anybody else have any comments regarding the RFP?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
With regard to the turnover rate that Mr. Spencer brought up just now, we are not terminating people at some alarming rates, as has been shared in the past and has just been mentioned. In fact, we've only had 6 separations with operators in the month of June, all of which were voluntary. So there were no involuntary separations that month. Only 2 for the month of May, and only 1 for the month of April. So there's not a max exodus of bus operators from Go Raleigh. We are having trouble recruiting and training, largely doing parts of the DMV backlog. But that's the primary reason for our shortfall of operators at the current moment.
So
thank you for that clarification.
Thank you for that clarification. Does anybody else I have comments, but I want to hold them. I want give you all an opportunity. Anybody else on the authority?
Jen Truman. I agree with a lot of the notes that Nathan Spencer had shared with us prior to the meeting for kind of specific additions. One thing that I think he started to maybe talk about in his comments just now, and it's something that I think would be valuable, is just a statement of values for what as a summary beginning page. I think every different city department has a guiding principle vision of how they want to have their customer service and things like that. And I think it would behoove us to include that in the RFP for the management company that is going to take that on. So I'm not sure if Raleigh Transit has that statement of values or if that's something that we as an authority can look at. But I think it's one thing to ask someone. In the many places in here we're asked, how does your company manage this? What is your suggestion for that? And it's another to state a strict value. My kid has lots of opinions too. Like if we believe that Go Raleigh should have a value of non-discrimination, a value of respect to all employees, stating that matter of factly is important.
Agreed. Gives us a benchmark to hold them by when it comes to this. Anybody else?
So this is LaPonda Edmondson, and I do echo a couple of the comments that we've heard around really being intentional about the design of the RFP and making sure that we know what we're asking for, because that is going to help us to know what we're looking for with any management company that comes on board. I think part of a recommendation would be that there does seem to require some level of mediation or understanding of the concerns that staff have been raising. And that seems to maybe be in the place of maybe an independent or an outside organization that can hold some listening sessions or do some, surveys or get some sort of opportunity for staff members to be able to share their honest and open reflection of their work experience and what they are seeing on a day-to-day. I think without that, one, those concerns will probably continue to come to this authority. But then it also could be fuel for how we rework what the RFP looks like. And then for the next, management company that takes on that contract, they will at least have an understanding of where the workforce is right now and what some of those concerns are, and then start to craft what is a roadmap for how to be able to mitigate issues that have come up. Because otherwise, I think some of these concerns are going to continue to roll over. And so that's a way that I think that we could be able to do that. And there are, a number of organizations that do that type of work, but there does need to be some independent outside, facilitator where it could be an open forum for people to start to share some of their thoughts and reflections about what their role has looked like. So that's my recommendation.
Thank you for that. Karen?
I want to say I appreciate everything that everyone has said today on the authority. And I mean, just having listened to concerns that have been raised over the last few years, since the authority has no legal role in resolving, labor management issues, it seemed to me that would be a top priority for the future, for the next management company. There has to be we need a company that's really effective at working with all levels of employees and has a way for resolving disputes. So that just seems to me the top issue. And given where we are today, and how important we know it's going to be, that we know we're working really hard to expand our transit system and improve frequency and build ridership, but we've got to have strong working relationships so we moving forward with all of our employees. So thank you.
Yeah, I echo a lot of what everybody is saying. We've been dealing with this for some time. Even pre-COVID. And I know the question came up originally about when we first started getting into the thick of this some time ago, our ability to terminate the contract. And I'm wondering if in this RFP or if in the contract that there's an opportunity to have that placed in there, that there is, if we're having consistent issues like this. I mean, we were on the news potentially going on strike. You all heard it, the issues run the gamut, and they're not isolated incidents. And if they are isolated incidents, the common denominator is the management, unfortunately. And that says a lot. And we want to make sure that whomever carries this contract is carrying the contract in a way that, we don't have to, there's other safety. There's other transit issues we're supposed to be discussing, right? Or our routes, we could be further along with some other things, and yet we're here kind of dealing with this. So I'm wondering if there's that clause that we can add to the contract or the RFP about, is there an opportunity for, if we are having this issue, for us to be able to pull the plug on the contract?
So all of our contracts do contain termination for convenience as well as termination for cause language. So that would be standard.
Why are we still dealing with this right now? What's the steps that we get to get to that place? Because I feel like we kind of passed that mark some time ago. Personally, is there a way to also add that we will do like a third party mediator? You know what I'm saying? Like when there are issues, things of that nature, that there is a unbiased party that can then maybe run interference for us to report back to us if there's issues that can't be resolved.
That is the collective bargaining process. So if the union and the management company do not agree, ultimately it does go to a third party national arbitrator for final determination.
So then I guess I'm confused a little bit. Maybe COVID interfered with some things about why we kind of haven't taken those roads.
Those roads have been taken in many cases.
Oh, I thought you were going to say something else. Is there an opportunity for us to interview any of the top selects that that respond to the RFP?
I didn't know if I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
No, that was a question. That's another question. Or if you had something to.
Okay, so it seems like now we're getting into direct questions regarding the RFP, and so the quick answer. Well, can you rephrase or restate the question? My apologies. My brain was going 100 different ways there.
No, I'm wondering, is there an opportunity for us to interview the top selects? Like once we get the RFPs in and say there's 3, companies, is there a way for us as an RTA to have an opportunity to interview them? And I know that we talked about a selection committee, and I'm wondering where we are in that process and who would sit there. So if there is a selection committee, which I hope that there is, I think it should be a combination of RTA, operators, union people, riders, even to talk about some of their, experience in this process. Where are we with that, with the selection committee, and can we interview top prospects?
So I did survey around the city, and I can't find any examples of boards or commissions actually doing selection processes, either for RFPs or for interviews. But I would need to check into that further before I could answer that. As far as our independent review board, we are trying to make sure we finalize those commitments for those individuals that would review the proposals. And as soon as we have who those individuals are, we'll make sure we share those with the authority. One thing that other departments have done or divisions have done is certainly as their boards and commissions have certain priorities that they want within a management company or a consultant or whatever the type of professional service may be. They have posed questions that would be included within the RFP. And then each consultant or management company or whatever type of proposal it is, each one has to answer those questions in writing so that the board can use that as guidance and, and staff can use those responses as guidance for the board's priorities. So again, I'm just relaying some ways that I know that it has been done. As far as direct participation, again, I would need to check on that.
Madam Chair, just to clarify, David, did you say that of that list of sort of categories of people that the chair mentioned, are those part of this selection committee?
Not as of yet. Currently we are targeting transit professionals, not from the city of Raleigh. We would facilitate the process. I have participated on other transit agencies review panels for management services as well. So we would follow a similar type of process. But certainly, if those bodies or something that is being requested by the board today, as I stated, I will certainly check to see if that is possible.
And of these questions, I apologize, I'm interrupting, but of these questions that you're saying, like the board could include in the RFP, how are those weighted in the responses, or are those just extras?
We could certainly make that part of the evaluation criteria. I mean, so really that is there to help develop the RFP in a way that meets the board's or commission's priorities, and then relaying that to staff and adding those questions we can make sure that that is incorporated into the overall scoring. Does it meet this question's intent and purpose, things of that nature? So I would think that you could do that in that format. And certainly, like I say, other boards and commissions have used that process.
I know that you said that you're not aware of if there are any boards or commissions that have been involved in the selection process. Can you see with the city attorney if it's legal or not for us to do it, whether the other boards are doing it or not?
I will certainly check and see.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? I know that we can't bar anybody from applying for the RFP. Is that correct?
That is correct. It is a federally, we will be following federal procurement guidelines. So that would be correct.
And how are we putting out the RFP to make sure that we get a good amount of respondents?
Generally, when we put out an RFP for management services, we follow the normal city process, obviously, which puts it on the state of North Carolina's procurement system website. But we also hit our national trade magazines, whether that's Metro, what we call Passenger Transport, APTA, American Public Transportation Association. Those major outlets we would also advertise in as well.
And I know that we are trying to get this out no later than the first week of August. What's the time frame for closing it? How long will it be out?
I don't know the exact timeline, but certainly it's a multi-step process. So we would put it out for a period of time. And I think in within the RFP, the timeline, or at least the steps within the timeline are in there. But just very quickly, we would solicit the RFP. We would have a pre-proposal meeting. At that point, we would also receive questions up to a certain period of time after the pre-proposal meeting, which we also take questions. We would then give ourselves a deadline to answer all questions, which then we would close the question asking period. Then we would give the proposers an amount of time to develop the proposals, and then they would actually submit those proposals on a specified date. Once we open the proposals, we would, depending upon the number, we would either interview all, or we would interview the selected proposals. And at that point, we would actually go into interviews. And so you could interject the board's questions or priorities into that process, even if they weren't actually in the RFP. I've seen it both ways, but you would have two opportunities to put those questions or priorities before the potential proposers and have them answer that. So, but generally that's how that would work. Once we went through the actual interviews, then we'd have final proposal rankings with a top ranked firm selected.
Hello, Dar. Thank you for joining us.
Madam Chair, I'm actually here. If I may, I want to touch on a few points. With regards to the scope of the RFP, there's parameters. The scope is limited. And the question is, well, what are those limitations? So I would suggest look to the transit code, the city code that speaks to what the RTA is charged to do. And I know there's been a lot of concern, expressions about contractor employee satisfaction, safety issues, morale. I understand that and I appreciate that. But so that the topic can stay within, say, the legal parameters of what council has said the RTA's charge is, look at city code, essentially. City code does not expressly discuss RTA getting involved in the contractor's labor disputes or labor grievance issues or mediating those internal employer issues. And remember that, well, for years, the city chose to hire out or hire a transit management firm to perform transit services and management services. The city chose decades ago not to take this role on itself. So as we all know, TransDev operators are not city employees. And the current contract with TransDev clearly says that TransDev, the management firm, shall be responsible for handling those internal labor relation issues. The city does not want to get involved in the minutia of those issues for several reasons, several good reasons. Now, mind you, it's certainly within RTA's purview, and it's important to receive public comment, and that public comment can provide valuable feedback in RTA's guidance to council. But and also remember that the TransDev operators and mechanics and other employees are represented by Amalgamated Transit Union, bless you, the ATU. And so they actually negotiated a 3-year collective bargaining agreement where they specifically agree that ATU will represent the employees' workplace grievances. And there is a 2-step process. There's an appeals process. So be mindful that there are very detailed mechanisms set up to address TransDev employee grievances. And I thought it was interesting that Mr. Dewberry did not bring up some of the issues. So I do wonder if the ATU shares the concerns that Mr. Spencer or some of the concerns that have been mentioned. Because at the end of the day, the ATU represents the grievances, if you will, of the operators with regard to TransDev. So my point is, and of course that those employees certainly have the right to come to RTA and express their concerns, no doubt. But my overall point is, if the discussion starts to wander a little bit about RTA's role, go back to the code, look at the code, and also what work plans did council approve for RTA? And if you look at the code, it mentions many times about transit service, maintain, operate facilities and equipment necessary or convenient for authority operations, including provision of public transportation services to equitably and efficiently establish and administer scheduling, routing, rates of transit service. Now, there's somewhat of an anachronism, and I don't mean to hijack the discussion, but there's somewhat of an anachronism in city code with regards to the RTA, because it was written way back in 1975 when it was contemplated that the city would actually be the operator through the authority. The authority would be the transit operator. So the code gave the authority all these sweeping powers. But as we all know, the RTA as we know it has been serving as an advisory board to council. And council has chosen years ago to hire out the management of the transit system to a private firm. But the underlying denominators of the code, the transit code, talk about performance of the transit system, transit service necessary and convenient for operations, efficiently establish, administer the service. It does not expressly get into labor relations between the contractor and the contractor's employees. And also, I don't think you'll find that in other city contractor-employee relationships either. So just bear that in mind as we go through the RFP process. There are strong mechanisms to look out for the contractor's employees' interests, and that's ATU. And they have, I think, a 32-page collective bargaining agreement that identifies many provisions for worker rights. And of course, there's many city contractor employees that don't have unions, that they don't have union representation. But it's just, this is a holdover from the Federal Mass Urban Transit Act, I think from the 60s, that still gives the union a role when it comes to transit services provided by a city. So I'm sorry to hijack. I just kind of wanted to throw those ideas in there. Right now, the code does not expressly authorize RTA or the city to get deeply involved in internal labor relation issues between the contractor and the contractor's employees. There's a collective bargaining agreement that Transdev and ATU hammered out themselves that specifically provides identified protections for the employees. And that is an ongoing thing, that the requirement to have union involved will carry forward with the next operator, whoever that is. And those protections are something that other contractor employees do not have. So I just wanted to throw those parameters out there. And what did council approve in its work plan for the RTA? I don't have that. I haven't looked at that. So those are some other parameters to consider when the RTA gets involved or provides input in the RFP process.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. I just wanted to share some thoughts on that.
Thank you for clarifying that for us. And I just have I know that Jen has a question, but I have a really quick question. I know that there's only so much we can do once the contract has been awarded, but where do we stand as an RTA in the process of awarding the contract?
Well, the city proper awards the contract, and historically that's been a staff and management function. Of course, the RTA has been providing valuable feedback to council for years, and I know council appreciates that. That's a fact. I don't know if that answered that question.
That helps. That, our role is to provide feedback on the process so that the city council can make their decision. And then we kind of get out the way and let ATU manage any issues. So they would be basically the third party that we're talking about that's supposed to step in and manage. But I don't know if we've ever heard from them in this whole process.
Terrence Dewberry has come before.
Terrence. Okay.
Come before the board many times. And, I'm not the factual person, and I haven't even seen the photo of the filthy bus, but is that a one-off situation? If we were to leave the meeting now and get on a Go Raleigh bus, would it be filthy? Or was that a one-off situation? So consider the metrics of, facts. You had another question. I forgot what that was.
Oh, no, I think Jen had a question.
Yeah, Madam Chair, if I may, thank you. This is Jen Truman. I appreciate your comments, Mr. Chinuri, if I said that correctly. I look forward to meeting you in person. I believe it at the Finance and Policy Committee meeting where we talked about this, Mr. Stevenson and Mr. Gill and I kind of talked in depth about the role of not getting involved directly in the relationship between employees and the management company, but rather that we are looking to be proactive in our creation and maintenance of a relationship with the people we hold a contract with. And I really appreciate you pointing us to the powers and duties that we were granted. I pulled up Municode and was looking at them, and one of them is in section 11, 4004B is the development and execution of contracts with a private transit management firm for provision of transit service, which I think is what we're doing right now. And so I like that
I think when we asked for this conversation out of finance and policy, what we were trying to get at were exactly those metrics and report backs from the transit management firm that will allow us to execute the contract and maintain those contracts to the value system and to the expectations, not just for transit frequency, but also for other safety issues like we're addressing with the safety plan. I'm glad the federal government, has given us a good template to follow there. But also with human resources metrics, getting some report backs on number of complaints and frequency of complaints so that we can know, oh, there's been one complaint that month and one person came to talk to us, or we can know there's been 75 complaints that month and one person came to talk to us, changes our perspective. So I feel like what we really are maybe asking for is some more of that conversation about the metrics, that like where we're trying to be at right now is what are we measuring and how much of that needs to be in the RFP versus how much of that needs to be in the signed contract versus how much of that needs to be in the interview criteria. And I think Mr. Eatman started to comment on that, but I feel like at least coming out of finance and policy, we had an understanding that we're talking about our contract with the management firm, not their contract with their employees. Is that helpful?
Yeah, that's helpful as long as I think we're in accord. Yes, RTA's focus should be on the contract between the city and the management firm. And that provision that you pointed out, development and execution of contracts with the private management firm for provision of transit service. So if RTA is interested in getting some employee metrics of the contractor, are you doing it because of concern over the provision of transit service? Or are you doing it over concern about the morale or satisfaction of those contractor employees? Transit service, provision of transit service, the quality of the transit service, the efficiency, all that, those fall within your charge. Now, I want to point out somewhat of an anachronism where it says execution of contracts. That provision, the RTA does not execute contracts. And this gets into an esoteric discussion, but the code was written back in 1975 and it contemplated the RTA would be this body politic legal entity that could execute contracts, that could basically be like a mini municipal entity. But that never happened. But what did happen, and the city decided to hire out to a management firm that role. So many of the verbs that you see in this code do not actually take place. The RTA, as we know it and have known it, is an important advisory board with members have various specialties in the transit area, and they advise council and make their concerns known to staff, which filters to council. But just FYI, you'll see old terms like execution of contracts. RTA does not do that.
I have a question to two questions to that point then. It sounds like that we then can legally execute contracts, we just don't.
You're not set up to do that. You're not a body politic. The steps have not been taken to turn RTA into that entity.
But doesn't it say in, like you just read, that though that's not how RTA works as we know it, that is still a form of governance that the RTA has legally?
It was authorized. It never happened.
So we're authorized to execute contracts legally.
That would be, I don't think you are. The enabling language was there, but it was never internally authorized. Council did not authorize that as a matter of practice.
Okay. And the other question, as it pertains to transit service versus morale, I would say that what we're talking about is transit service. It's not just the feeling of our operators, but it is affecting retention of operators. I can say maybe the bus is a one-off, maybe it's not, because this is something that we've heard before we saw it. So it does sound like that this kind of, the space that we're in, though we're hearing a lot of how people feel about their experience as an employee, former or current, it still goes back to the you know, service of transportation versus going to disputing personal risks, which is why the young lady that spoke up, Ms. Williams, today, we kind of backed off of going into create any detail, you know, excessive detail into her issues because of the legality of it. Does that make sense? But we are still kind of
if based on whatever measurements that staff, management, whatever objective measurements suggest that the transit service is being impacted, whatever they are, then that would fall under the purview of the RTA. That's a broad umbrella.
This is Nathan Spencer. I'm going to make an analogy here. So McDonald's is a franchise. So if I own a McDonald's, the labor I hire, McDonald's corporate doesn't. However, if my staff is throwing French fries and hamburgers at the customers, then it becomes a corporate issue because it's brand and its image. And it hurts the overall ability for the function and the brand to operate. In this case, we've got kind of the reverse, where it's almost the franchise owner is the one that's causing some grief, according to what we're hearing. And so I think that it is fully within our responsibility to outline ways in which we can make sure that the employees are the most comfortable, because it directly impacts whether riders are comfortable, feel safe on buses, and whether they're clean.
I can't speak to the hamburger French fry throwing hypothetical. Not going to go there. But the fallback is the equitable and efficient operation of the transit system.
Madam Chair, if I may follow up then.
Yes, please. Jen.
I guess I would have a direct question for Mr. Eatman, as I think he alluded to this earlier, and it's where I was interested in heading, which is what are those measurable parameters that we can include? And first, do they need to be included in the RFP? And do we have some more time to work on them if they don't?
So I did provide 23 metrics, everything from general metrics to maintenance metrics to operating metrics in the email. So those are the ones that we were going to put in the RFP. If the board decides later that it wanted to actually add a different metric, or we may even remove some of these because they are, some of them are somewhat similar to each other, but they're all very comprehensive, then we would have the opportunity to do that. Please understand that the RFP is really, we're at this point just gauging who the team they will propose, each proposer will propose. So who's the general manager, who's the maintenance manager, and what's their structure? And then also, what are their principles for operating the system? What is their broad principles for safety, customer service, employee retention, those types of things. As I discussed, if the board wants me to put some of those either in questions during interviews or into the RFP, those can be done very quickly and easily, and we can make sure that they respond to those directly. So again, if anybody has anything other than the 23 that we put out there, please let me know. But that's what we were proposing to at least start with in the RFP. Now, those can be tweaked as we go through interviews and as we develop final contract. Now, again, to make sure that I clarify, these are the things that we would require them to track for us monthly, quarterly, like that. This is not, obviously, the other information I provided was how were we going to gauge the proposals. So just didn't want that to get confused in the shuffle.
This is Karen. Karen Range, questions or comment a question. One is, who ultimately decides who the contract will be awarded to? Is that the city council? And then secondly, I assume in the selection process, just you would do with any hire, you're going to be reviewing how effective they've been in other locations, what kind of feedback.
That's in the RFP. Yes.
Yeah. Right.
So ultimately it is council. But council is ultimately going to want a recommendation from this body. So the way we would normally proceed is staff or either a selected members of the transit community that aren't staff, which is what we're planning to do, would evaluate the proposals and then recommend who the interview should go to. We would then interview and then that body would recommend to the, through us, through transit staff with the city, would recommend a top ranked firm. It would actually rank the firms in order with qualifications for each. Now, if the transit authority determined that the top ranked wasn't exactly what they wanted because of these variables, then certainly the transit authority could recommend a different one to the council. As long as there's good, as long as there's a good process for either staff, anyway, put it this way, once we evaluate proposals from the interview and from the document, there needs to be a methodology. Now, generally speaking, you always want to go with your top ranked firm. If you cannot negotiate a contract with that top ranked firm, you are able to go to the next. But if you go through that systematic process, you do need to go with your top ranked firm. Again, right now we are proposing that we use some of our transit peers to actually do that. That takes we're taking staff kind of out of that process and putting them in that because they do this as well. But again, if the transit authority would rather for us to take on that role in addition to some outside reviewers, we could go that route as well. I'm certainly up to recommendations on how to move forward with that.
I definitely would like for whomever in the contract or as they put together their response to the RFP to discuss how they handle disputes and low morale and things of that nature with employees and operators. How do they manage keeping a equitable and cohesive relationship between union and non-union employees, things of that nature, like some of the issues we've run into.
Yes.
How they've managed COVID, in some of their other areas that they're managing.
That's actually a section that we were going to rewrite within the proposal, was really taking that section that talked about low ridership and turning that into more of a COVID, because traditionally, ridership was declining nationally. So that's where that came from. But really turning that more into a COVID recovery type of response. How are you going to address this? So yes, most definitely good thoughts there. Just for clarification, discuss how they handle disputes. That is already within the 3-year CBA. So that is very detailed on how all disputes are handled. That's kind of a step-by-step process. But certainly when it goes to morale, equitable treatment of all employees across union and non-union levels, we can certainly make sure that those high priorities are in there.
Yeah, I mean, and if they have any experience managing, enhanced transportation, like what we're putting in place with the BRT, what their experience with things of that nature are. If there was any way that we can if they can add references, so that we can.
Yeah, we're requesting extensive reference documentation. Most definitely.
Okay, good. So that we can have somebody else to ask how, because of course everybody's going to say they're doing things great. They have no problems. They've been 5-star, but giving us an opportunity to actually vet that. Those are my suggestions.
Madam Chair, as far as the makeup of the committee goes, I do like the idea of having transit peers being part of that committee, but it also seems to me to have somebody from the Go Raleigh staff should be part of the process, just because of the knowledge of our needs, our community. I mean, if David, what you're suggesting is that perhaps it could just be all peers and no one from Go Raleigh, that doesn't seem like the best strategy in my opinion, but I could be wrong.
I mean, I agree with Karen. Before you answer that, David, just to piggyback on what she's saying, from the perspective of what we've gone through, and having some of that, those who are directly impacted by by bringing them in, having an opportunity to speak to that. So if it's staff, if it's someone from ATU, if it's Dewberry, if it's someone from NCTWA, I personally think all three, staff and 2 other people that are directly connected, having access to being a part of that committee, and then bringing that information back to the RTA as how they've made their decisions for us to make our decision.
I agree with all that, because I think that a search committee that can have both the inside but also the personnel understanding of the issues is going to be really valuable for deciding who to go with. I think also a factor should be or a question might be valuable to focus on how they resolve certain issues regarding morale or
I got that.
Or issues that are not arbitration focused. I mean, I get that there's a process within all these where if there's a dispute, it goes through, this step-by-step process. But a lot of the issues that we're dealing with right now are in that gray area. They don't fit into, there's an immediate dispute process. And so having an understanding of how they dealt with issues like this would be very valuable.
Madam Chair, this is Jen. Can I follow up?
Yes, please.
Just first, thank you, Mr. Eben, for directing me back to the spreadsheet. I do have a couple of things I want to ask to add to that, but first, I just wanted to kind of say that I think I'm hearing all of us say that yes, we would like to review the interview questions, because I'm assuming we're following a kind of a federal guidelines of an interview where everyone's going to be asked and recorded the same questions during this process. So I feel like if we could have another meeting where we get to actually review the drafted interview questions, I'd like to request that.
I would like to, I'm sorry, go ahead, Jen, you had something else?
I have a couple of things I'd like to add for performance reporting, but go ahead on that subject.
Oh, no, it wasn't on that subject. I was just going to ask that, I'll wait, hold it, go ahead.
I think that we should ask for reporting on HR complaint numbers. I think we should ask for all pass-bys, not just wheelchair pass-bys. I think we should ask for reporting on operator turnover rates. And I think we should ask for any safety and OSHA reporting, which they have to record anyways. I think we should ask for copies of those reports. I'm done now.
And I was going to ask if, I know that some of what we have to do has to go to City Council, but if you all could possibly request that our liaison with City Council maybe is able to attend our August meeting if he's free, so that if we have any questions or, things like that, that we can kind of have his input here also, so that we're not overstepping as we move forward with this.
All right, so I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
I was asking for us to have our city council liaison be able to be present at our August meeting if he's available, so that, I mean, as we bump into some of the things that are outside of our purview and may need some insight from city council in the direction that we're going in, since they do have the final say, kind of getting some of his input and insight on what's been going on here.
We can certainly request that he attend.
Thank you.
For staff clarification, regarding the initial release of the RFP, you do want to hold that until August? Do you want to have a earlier meeting, or you want to wait to the regular meeting in August to review that? Or if we incorporate everything that we discussed today and get out the final draft, and the board through email feels comfortable with that, knowing that you're going to receive at that point, again, all we're doing is we wouldn't receive proposals until September. So if there was something overarching that we wanted to make sure was covered, that could always happen through the interview process. So again, just trying to make sure that we're following a clear path on how staff can roll out the RFP, but also meet the board's expectations.
Has everybody on the authority had an opportunity to actually read the RFP? I think that it's okay if any provision, additions or revisions that you make to it, if we can send that out. I mean, we can send it out before the August meeting, but I would prefer us to wait till August to send it out, say August 1st, so that we have an opportunity to review anything extra if anything comes up between now and then, and we don't feel too rushed.
Yeah, the actual August board meeting, again, is not until, so that would not occur until the 12th. But even after the 12th, we could always issue an addendum, or again, we can build anything that we may want to include into qualifications or overarching types of activities into the questions that would have happened to the final candidates that would be in an interview. So again, a couple of ways to do that.
I'm not saying wait until our authority meeting. I'm just saying, yes, making the RFP live like the first week of August.
Oh, yeah, that's our plan, and we would get that out in advance of when we even posted it. So, okay. Yes,
that's my suggestion. What does anybody else think?
Yeah, I don't think we should wait a lot longer. It's more important, I think, the process after the RFPs are received, and we need, as Nathan said, time's passing. So.
Yeah. So it sounds like we're all on the same timeline.
Yeah, and I think being open to receiving our suggestions via email would be great, and we would appreciate seeing a responsive RFP to that.
Yeah. All right. Are there any other questions in regards to this RFP item? All right. That brings us to the end. I feel like that was a very spirited conversation. Thank you all for hanging in there. We're now at 6:40, so thank you for your time and sticking around with us. Are there any extra comments, concerns, questions about anything that we've gone over today?
Dwight Spencer.
Hello?
So I would just say thank you for everyone for the longer than usual meeting. I think it was very beneficial, very helpful for staff. So thank you very much today.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, staff. Thank you, everybody who signed up for public comment. Thank you, RTA members. Thank you for your dedication and your time. We're going to call this meeting to a close, 6:40, July 8th, 2021. Thank you for your time. And I hope you all enjoy your month. Stay safe, and I will see you in person in August.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Good night, y'all.
Good night.